You're listening to Season 2 of the Mies Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Sharkey, the founder and CEO of Mies, a culinary operating system for food professionals. On the show, we're going to talk to high performers in the food business, everything from chefs to CEOs, technologists, writers, investors, and more, about how they innovate and operate and how they consistently execute at a high level, day after day. And I would really love it if you could drop us a 5-star review anywhere that you listen to your podcast. That could be Apple, that could be Spotify, could be Google. I'm not picky. Anywhere works, but I really appreciate the support. And as always, I hope you enjoy the show. With every stroke of the pencil, I'm giving you folks a glimpse into my experiences. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest today on the show is Nabeel Alamgir. Nabeel is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Lunchbox. Lunchbox specializes in online ordering and just generally helping restaurants generate a lot more revenue from their native digital ordering. I met Nabeel at least 5-6 years ago, before he started Lunchbox, when he was still the chief marketing officer at Bear Burger, when he was talking about building a company like this. I think he was on a panel at this tech conference, and we had just sort of connected. And it was really awesome to see, literally fast forward a few months later, and he launched this product. Nabeel was born in Bangladesh and grew up in Kuwait until he was about 15 and then moved over to Queens. So he is a Queens boy by heart for sure. And we definitely talk a little bit about why the food in Queens is so good. But really we spend most of the time just chatting about trials and tribulations of, being a CEO of a company and how we manage stress, how we manage our time and how we manage our health and things like that. Nabeel and I catch up maybe twice a year. So it had been a while since we had last talked. So it's always nice to hear how things are going. Things are going very well for him, and he's come a long way as a leader. And he had some really interesting sort of insights into how he's been growing the company as he's grown as a leader. Some of the frameworks that he uses for managing time. One of the really interesting things I saw, which was, I think it's like a kid's toy. This like little, it looked like a toy, but it was so interesting. It had a label maker that he clearly used to label the things that he wants to remember to do in a day. And he was like clicking them off. Very cool, because it's so analog in such a digital world that he's in. So, we swapped some sort of tips and tricks of how we each manage our time. And he talks about kind of the future of digital ordering, gives some tips for restaurants on how to increase digital orders in your restaurant. And of course, a bunch more. So I loved catching up with him. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And if you did, please, as I think I've mentioned a couple of times, I would love it if you would give us a 5-star. And you know what? I'm usually not picky, but how about this time? Just throw it into Apple iTunes if you can. Enjoy the show. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I don't remember when we last caught up, but
we do like twice a year.
Yeah. I tell everybody that I know that comes on, like, this is just an excuse for me to get to talk to people that I, love and respect. And I don't have to, I actually get to schedule the call. So I know it's going to happen and people just get to, be along for the ride. So,
well, the admiration is mutual and we build our companies at the same time. So it's been awesome watching you do your thing.
Well, I'm going to start there because I remember very vividly when you started building Lunchbox. You were still at Bear Burger. I think you were still at Bear Burger, but you were definitely like pushing Lunchbox. I was, the COO at Orify at the time. And yeah. I remember so well, like talking to the team, like, guys, look at this product that he built. This is insane. Like we had been talking for a year about how to build an app to sell our product online. And as you know, it was a huge uphill battle to get everyone sort of bought in. And I think the biggest reason was like, no, this can't be true. It can't be that this thing just works the way that it does and it's going to work so quickly. Turns out it actually does.
Yeah.
But,
we didn't know
early on, it was like, nah, I don't know. This seems like it's not going to work. But, you pushed through, and I'm sure you had a million no's before you got to not just yes in terms of investors, customers. And that's what I love most about just seeing your journey, Nabeel, is people see, there's so much success with Lunchbox and, how much, you guys have grown and how well you, have built a product and tell a story. And you've raised millions of dollars. But I know, and that there was a bunch of heartache and pain and probably crying, or at least misery.
So many. How many breakdowns are you having a year right now? I'm having 4 a year.
So, I have way more than that. I have 2 kids though,
Way more?
so it's more
2 kids. Yeah.
more weekly. But I think these are really helpful. I don't know about you, and actually, I do
It's
know
so
about
cathartic.
you.
Like
Yeah.
talking to fellow founders, so cathartic.
Yeah, it's actually funny because part of what I was going to ask you today was not just about founders, but you've done a really good job of like surrounding yourself with really great advisors as well. But man, it's very lonely, and no
So
matter what happens, as when you start a company, you're pretty much in isolation. So the more you can sort of just talk with others that are in that same boat, it's just so helpful. So we're going to talk about that today a little bit. But before we get to that, I peripherally know about your background because just honestly, just seeing the stories. I think you're from Queens, right? And your family is from Bangladesh. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in Queens, and how the hell did you get into what you're doing now from that?
Before Queens, I came to the country when I was 15. I came from Kuwait.
Okay, you were born overseas.
Yeah, I was born in Bangladesh, and then lived in Middle East. Went through the Iraq War. I was in Kuwait at the time. Saw that happen. Realized America is such a, we were from Kuwait's point of view, we were like, oh, that's a great country coming to help us save our butts. And then I came here 2005 when I was 15, and I came to Queens, and it was a magical place to be, and still is. I'm a Queens guy. I hopefully walk, sound, talk like one. If not, I hope I will eventually. But Queens is a great place for a lot of outsiders to come and not feel like they're all from all these places and they don't belong. Everyone is from so many different places. You become, part of just like this New York vibe we have, this amazing thing that you cannot replicate anywhere else, that only this city has built, that you and I grew up in together. So growing up in Queens was amazing, and I was a shy kid.
What part of Queens?
I grew up in Jackson Heights, where all the Indians grew up. Jackson Heights. Amazing Bengali and Indian and Pakistani food.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Bryan High School, and I was shy. I sat in the back of the class, scored really high on my exam, sat in the back, and did not say 2 words. I learned English watching mafia movies, used my hands a lot. Eventually, when I picked it up, I never stopped talking, which is a defect of its own. But growing up in Queens was amazing. And at 17, I found some of my voice when I finally joined the restaurant industry. I joined Bear Burger, which we both know about. It's an amazing New York City burger chain. But at the time, we had a single burger joint, and I was a busboy. And I was a busboy for a long time, like 2 years. And then I stayed additional 8 years in corporate and worked my way up to CMO. But that was my 10-year journey before this. So I did American high school, 10 years of restaurant, and Lunchbox. I've had three big, movements in my life.
It's nuts. So we're going to talk a lot about Lunchbox today, but Queens also has so much good food. I remember, it's still around. It's not the same sort of, intensity of everybody going there as it used to be. But there's a place called Shriepa Pie that everybody used to go to for Thai food.
In Woodside.
Yeah, and they have this crispy watercress salad. So, yeah, and obviously like spicy and tasty and Flushing and all those spots, and the Greek, obviously the Greek spots. That's the beautiful thing about Queens. Mm-hmm. It is a mix of culture, but also because of that, people don't even know there's so much good food there.
So much good food.
Like you don't even have to go to Manhattan unless you want to get like some sort of like, fine dining meal.
Yeah.
But you don't live in Queens now, do you?
No, I lived in Queens my entire life. I just like a year ago moved to Upper East Side. And the reason I moved to Upper East Side is because it's right off the bridge from Queens. So I can go back to the airports quickly, go back to see my family in Jamaica, Queens quickly.
Nice. Yeah, my mom grew up in Rego Park.
Nice. My parents lived in Forest Hills and Regal Park for a little bit too.
Nice. So obviously you spent a bunch of time at Bear Burger. So the first one was in Queens, right? That's it.
Yeah, first one was in Astoria, Queens.
I had a group of restaurants called Bark I used to own. And we opened our third one on Bleecker Street. And there was a Bear Burger on LaGuardia, on the corner.
Place.
It was the best location for like colleges and things.
That was our second location.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I used to make milkshakes there.
I probably saw you. I must have. That's funny. Well, anyways, fast forward. Then you launched Lunchbox, and how long from I had this idea of this thing to a customer's now using it and paying for us? How long did that? What was like the gap between those two things?
I think it happened. Hemingway has a line, which is someone asked him, "How did you become poor?" And he said, "Gradually and then suddenly." And that's how Lunchbox was born as well. It happened very quickly, where to find the exact inception is hard. Except we were looking at the problem every day as restaurant operators, like you and I were, right? You were looking at the problems in your restaurants, and Mies was born out of that. The exact same thing was happening with us, which was like we were dealing with all this amazing stuff Sweet Green was doing, and we're like, how can we do that and not spend so much money? And how can we go ahead and have a competitive product to all these amazing marketplaces products that are out there, so we can win some of our own customers and build our own IP? How do we do it? How do we do it? As a CMO, that was what I wrestled with the most. And we used systems, second movers, like GoParrot was a great company at the time I was using. I was using Level Up at the time, which I thought, I was very fond of them at the time.
Are they still around?
No, they just shut down around
It was
6 months ago.
so ubiquitous for so long and then just gone.
Yeah. That's what happens when Grubhub buys you. But that's neither here or there. But so I was using all these second movers and I was getting a lot out of them, but I was like, how about we do it ourselves? Restaurant people building restaurant tech. Is that such a magical concept? So that's what we did. And we said, you know what? GoParrot, you guys have an amazing web. Can you make an app? They said no. I said, okay, we'll make that app. So we made the app. We took their web. We tried to connect them. We couldn't. We said, all right, we're going to do the web as well. It went from 30 days we did the app, 60 days we did the app and web. We had a customer in 60 days, which was Bear Burger, and then I just called our friends in New York, a lot of mutual friends. Would you use it? Stickies, would you use it? Wings Over, would you use it? And it seems like everyone wanted to use a product not ready to be used, not ready, but they're like, you know what? One of our guys are making it. One of our guys is making it. We're going to back it, and we're going to make sure we have a seat at the table, because we've not had that for a while with these tech companies. I think that's day one or month one or quarter one of how it was born. And first quarter, we had like a dozen customers. And it wasn't easy by any means. It wasn't easy. Like, these customers are still with us for the most part, but they put up with a lot, and we wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of crossing the chasm, those were definitely the very, very early adopters or innovators. It had to have been at least a year or so, but I don't know if you remember this, and I don't know why, I just thought about it today, but you were at a conference called Tech Table. You're in the city.
I remember it exactly.
And I remember you, I don't know why I remember this, but you were actually, nothing to do with Lunchbox. You were there for some other panel representing Bear Burger as the CMO. And I remember you saying, oh, we're going to disrupt the industry. I have something I'm working on. No mention of Lunchbox. So at least in terms of timestamp, that was my anchor of like, oh yeah, that's when.
That was 3-4 months before we released it. And I said on stage, we should build something together as operators. And I remember Adam was on stage, Adam Eskin, CEO of Dig, and
cowboy hat.
Cowboy hat. He had a cowboy hat. I was like, "Are you from Texas?" He said, "No." I was like, "Okay."
I'm an urban cowboy.
Yeah.
I actually want to get your thoughts on like the future of like what this ordering is like, because it's all pretty new. New in meaning like in the last 5 years has come a pretty long way. So for a very long time, there was basically no online sales, and then right around 2010, Seamless, Grubhub, DoorDash started offering this. I remember I owned restaurants, and we would have fax machines, and we would get orders via fax, and it would come in. You're paying an arm and a leg, but you didn't even think about it because it's just new orders. Then, you start, Grubhub lets you do like your own website for $1, but nothing happens. Now people are actually able to own their native sales, their ability to sort of sell their own product, without, third-party distributors. How does that work? I know obviously with any company, right? There's like Google SEM, you can spend money on ads, you can retarget people, but how does Lunchbox, and I guess Lunchbox is a proxy for the premise of like native online ordering. How do you help them like generate more revenue?
First there's a group of customers that are loyal to you, and they're looking for a platform. They're looking to be platformed appropriately, and they're not platformed on third-party companies. If I'm a fan of, let's say Little Beat Salad, right? If I'm a fan, I am going to go ahead and download your app, check your website, see if there's merch there, depending on how much do I identify with that brand and how much of a lifestyle brand it is. And there's these customers out there that are looking to connect with their favorite brands. Like, I give you so much money, man. I wish you knew I give you so much money.
Yeah.
I wish, because when I had a one-off, they knew they used to give me free beers. Like, now at scale, couldn't we replicate that at Sweet Green or at Shake Shack or at Bear Burger? And that's what we want to do. So we want to create a platform so you can speak to your loyal guest first, right? Because you will never convince a Uber Eats super user to get off Uber Eats. It's a great app. It's a beautiful app. Their card is there. It works. Well, if they're a regular user, they want a refund, they get their refund quickly. It's great. But they are a user of Uber Eats, of the marketplace. And that's one type of user. There's a type of user that wants to be your user and wants to connect with you. Are you ready to connect in technology? That's where Lunchbox comes in. But more important than Lunchbox, do you have the hospitality skills to do that, right? What are some ways you can do that? By making sure these are the people that know about your menu offering before everyone else does. By making sure they have limited, LTOs first, they have specials first, that you're taking care of them first, you're giving them news first, you're releasing things to them first, or even just communicating them or giving them better service, whatever it may be, whatever defines your version of setting the table, your version of being a little bit better in hospitality. How can you go ahead and build that with your super users via the technology we've built for you? That's the relationship we try to have with restaurants. So let me expand that a little bit more. We work with Clean Juice. They have 100 restaurants. They really care about building great habits with their users. So their users can become a subscription member and get juices delivered automatically 4 times a month. That's a cool technology. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to get repeat users to have less friction, repeat users to go ahead and be consistent members who are paying them, and also making sure that inventory is good and we're getting these things out on time and building great habits with customers who are trying to be on a cleanse program. That is one way tech plays a small part, but we play a small part, dude. We are a tiny part of the stories these restaurants want to tell, and the stories are hospitality stories.
Yeah. All those companies you mentioned, your 100 unit, 200 large groups, and I know because your product has grown so much, you can service these really large groups. Just thinking through how someone gets started. Let's just say I'm the next Sweet Green, but I have one location, or I'm a fine dining restaurant that crushes it, and I also have this really good sort of takeout. I'm sort of starting to scale. What are some of the things that you've learned from helping all these restaurants that folks can do to just grow more digital sales and get them away from the margin you're losing from third party?
Yeah, there's a Bengali restaurant in New Jersey called Kuwait Kitchen. I'm Bengali, by the way. It's a place right next to India. And I ordered food from them. And actually, it was really far. So I had my assistant drop it off. And the packaging was awesome. There's a little note. And the lady wrote, "I'm writing on behalf of my mom who doesn't write English, but thank you so much for ordering from us. Hyphen, Team Kuwait, And I posted it on Instagram on how awesome this packaging was and the food was. And, they reposted it. And we had a small moment. And 6 months later, I see them in my inbox inquiring if they need Lunchbox. And I jumped on a call and said, "You don't need Lunchbox. I'll give it to you for free. I love your restaurant and your food. You only a location. I'll give it to you for free. You don't need it. You're on Toast. You have native ordering there. Turn it on. It matches your menu. It's the easiest. It's the least friction. Turn it on." Right? I believe they were on Square or Toast, whatever it may be. But my point is, you can do a lot with what you have, right? You can do a lot with what you have. Make the best out of what you have. You don't need the difference between, and this more than anyone else, the difference between a 1 unit and a 10 unit is massively different, right? A lot changes operationally. And then 10 to 50 is the next milestone, right? So you don't need a enterprise tech when you have a single location. You need to pay the bills and make sure you're testing things out. So the first thing I would do if I was a restaurant operator is go on Marketplace and see if people are even ordering my food. Oh, they are? Okay. All right, cool. Then I would go do native.
How do you find that out? How do you find out if you're an operator, if someone's ordering your food from, you mean because you have DoorDash and things like that? Just
turn it on and see if you're even discoverable.
Yeah.
What is it? Why? Okay, if you're being discovered, great. Let's figure out why. If you're not being discovered, let's figure out why. Is my food not traveling well? Is the packaging bad? Or is it my words, my pictures? First, play that game. Experiment there as a digital marketer, or make your kids or someone do that part, right? But first, see if there's a demand, supply and demand. After that, I would go on, do something first party. And then for first party, I'd just do web first. You don't need an app. Everyone doesn't need an app. We have customers on our system that doesn't need an app. So you need to first pick what's right for you. And for a single unit operator, the best thing is to have your own first party ordering and just show more love when someone is ordering from that site. A little extra note, a little extra promo. Grubhub and those contracts say you cannot offer deals to come to first party. They're
Yeah.
not checking. They're small time. They're not checking. But go and just talk to your community, and your community will be your repeat business. And as you scale and open 100 more locations, hopefully, we can explore Lunchbox and
Yeah.
Olo and all these other enterprise companies.
Yeah. I don't know if you, by the way, if you don't know this answer, it's totally fine. I thought you might know the stats on this. Do you have any sense of like what % of the country is actually doing native digital ordering? Like, where they're getting orders on their actual website or app versus none at all?
So the number one way people are still ordering delivery in the country is via the phone, believe it or not. I look at the stats and it blows my mind. That's why we just acquired a call center. So we have a bunch of call center technology now we're doing with Papa John's. But number one is still phone calls. It's crazy,
Yeah.
Number two is marketplaces. Number three is native. I don't have the exact numbers, but that's the stack rank.
Got it. Yeah. We had like this offsite with my team a couple weeks ago, and we ordered.
Where'd you go?
It was like in a boardroom in New York. Our all team one is in Miami in a couple weeks. Shout out Lifehouse
How
Hotel
big is
for
the
that.
team now?
It's 28 internal.
Wow.
And we have contractors as well. So we're pretty small still, I think.
That's awesome.
So anyways, we ordered from this restaurant down the street. This was in like the Nomad area, They left out a couple things in the order. And so I called the restaurant, and it was 100% a call center in the Philippines. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I go on the restaurant. You would think they have like it's like down the block. And this is just like definitely like some single unit sort of Thai spot. Good food. I don't remember the name, but like they were getting their calls answered by, a team in the Philippines. I was like, wow, that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Instead of employing someone to do it. Then there's actually really cool companies. There's one called Slang. I don't know if you know about it. That like helps.
I've heard
with,
of Slang. Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but I've heard it's really good just to sort of do the same thing, but with AI instead of people. But anyways, I'm going to spend most of the time not on Lunchbox, but like on you're just the arc of how you've changed for the last, I don't know how many years it is since you launched, because to your point, right? You were in a restaurant for 10 years and now you're the CEO of a tech company. There's not a lot of in between there, right? You had a big learning curve of what it meant to be a founder, to be a founder of a tech company, to be a founder of a venture-backed tech company, to be a founder of a venture-backed tech company that went through COVID and went through a market crash and things like that. You can call it a crash. So there's a lot, I think, that would be interesting to kind of dig into. But like, if you had to think about like, what are like the worst decision that you've made in the last 5 years and the best? Do you have a sense of like what
I have the worst ready because, we're founders. We think about them often, especially when we accidentally wake up 2 a.m. and can't go to bed anymore because the brain started again.
Mm-hmm.
Going remote is my biggest regret. I wish we never went remote. You cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Mm-mm.
But we were a COVID company and we didn't know any better. Oh, you can hire cheaper talent if you go remote. That was a fallacy. That's a lie. Oh, you can hire cheaper talent if you hire Canadians. That's not true as well. The countries, the salaries have become, the same across the board, no matter where you live anymore, for the most part. And so my biggest regret is going remote. Some of our top performers are members that live far away, that don't live in New York. But I'm still allowed to have regrets. And the regret is I wish we had office. I wish we had that buzz. I wish we had that camaraderie. I wish we got into arguments and went for drinks at the end of the day and figured it out. And I wish we had all of those things, but we don't. So that's my biggest regret.
It's so true. Yeah. Once you go remote, you can't change it because everybody's scattered. Where are you going to put your office now? You're going to have 3 offices? I mean, you can, but it's tough. And obviously then kind of defeats the purpose of being remote because it's more expensive. What about like the best decision?
The best decision I made, I mean, there's so many. No, that's so many. There's so many bad decisions I made. But the best decision I think I've made, like the way I formed our leadership team, it's a nice blend of industry leaders. Like there's folks like Amy Hom in there, there's folks like Chrissy from Spot On, and then there's people who are 25, best marketer in the world, leads my marketing, head of marketing, 25, never was a head of marketing before, and is crushing, right? And our leadership team is like a nice blend of all the 2 groups that just gets along, just like, like I when we in the Monday morning we're exchanging information what we did over the weekend, and I'll hear the different age groups and different backgrounds share what they're doing, and it's just hilarious to hear how a common mission has really brought us together and has made us better for being so different than each other.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that leadership team. They are amazing.
This show is brought to you by, you guessed it, Meez. Meez helps thousands of restaurants and food service businesses all over the world build profitable menus and scale their business successfully. If you're looking to organize your recipe IP and train your team to put out consistent product every day in less time than ever before, then Meez is just for you. And you can transform all those old Google Docs and Word docs and PDFs and spreadsheets and Google Sheets into dynamic, actionable recipes in Meez in lightning speed. Plus, stop all that manual work of processing invoices because Meez will digitize all your purchases automatically. And there's a built-in database of ingredient yields, prep yields, and unit of measure conversions for every ingredient, which means you're going to get laser-accurate food costs in a fraction of the time. Visit www.getmeez.com. That's GETMEEZ.com to learn more. And check out the show notes moving forward because we're going to be adding promotions and discount codes so that all of you lovely and brilliant Meez podcast listeners get a sweet deal on Meez. I love that, man. I mean, I don't know about you, but typically that comes, and I love our leadership team as well. Typically that comes, at least for me, it did, with like a lot of mistakes before that of wrong hires, not because they were the wrong people.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't even want to think about the mistakes I made before where the iteration is now this current team.
Yeah. And what's interesting with that is it can be the wrong hire that's also an incredible person, but just not for that job or at that time, or for the thing that you need,
That's my biggest weakness. Hiring amazing people, but the wrong stage of Lunchbox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talked about like different ages in the age group. And, I think we're probably at least a decade apart in age.
I've said this to you always. You're aging like fine wine.
I appreciate that, man.
I've said this to you before. I've said this to you when we're not being recorded.
I know. You have, and I appreciate that. But, I'm curious because you forget once you get older, what like the younger part. And I love seeing when people start something so early and then it kicks off and then they start to learn more from it and grow from it. There's got to be a lot of advantages of being a young founder. And there's probably some disadvantages as well. And I have to imagine you have thought about at least a little bit, both of those. I'm curious, like your perspective on what has been helpful about being such a young founder and what are the things that you find actually to be blockers or difficult about it?
I'm a series of accidental wins and mistakes that have come to the point I have today, somehow stumbled here. And the first thing I do is I love and give grace to myself for all the things I've done wrong. Like it's fine. You were doing your best. I wish you did not. I wish you were a little bit better, but you're fine. Stop being so hard on yourself. So that's the first thing I really had to learn to do in 2023. Like that inner critic was very powerful. And I had to be like, can you calm down a little bit? All right. Like you're a son of a taxi driver and a mom who's a Dunkin' worker. You're doing fine. Can you relax? Okay. So like, that's the first thing I'll say, which is it's easy to go back and look at these things, but I really had to work hard on stop being so negative to myself and like start being like a little bit kinder. Now there's so many mistakes I've made and so many things that I've gotten right because of my age. I'll give you one, which is I don't know how things are done. So I'm doing them almost from first principle mentality, which is like, this sounds like a good idea. Why don't we do this? Well, that's not how you do that. Why not? Well, that's not how we did it. Why not? So that's an advantage, right? But sometimes there's a reason something was done a certain way. And you need to realize that the maturity and the intelligence is realizing when do you use first principle and when do you go ahead and stick to tradition. I think the smartest person in the room is the person who knows when to pull and push those levers. So, I mean, I see that all the time happen. I think another mistake I made, and this I'll give you something more explicit, which is when I was building this company and brand, I was very loud and I was very aggressive and I was a restaurant operator that was out there talking. And I don't think that's the right tone when you're helping restaurant operators. Okay, right? Like I was just being myself, and what I needed to do was evolve from a restaurant operator to a tech CEO who was a former restaurant operator. And that required maturity and getting my butt kicked to realize that there's some growing there to do. And because I'm not just dependent on myself, there's a lot of team members we have in the company who are dependent on me getting it right. and saying the right things and being thoughtful about what leaves my mouth, even if, something will sound better in an
Yeah.
article versus something that will not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about it a lot because this is such a new industry for me. Similar to you, I was a chef and restaurant owner for 20 some odd years before I got into tech. And I think the beauty of, and this is not innately because someone is young, but when you're young, you have far less sort of like cognitive biases, and and first principle thinking and using intuition to make decisions is what you have, right? That's all you have. And the experience is something that comes later, and you can definitely succeed, with that intuition and first principle thinking, especially if you surround yourself with folks that were experienced, right? That have seen that, to like sort of remind you, hey, I love that, but by the way, here's some things that happened historically or some empirical, information you might want to know when you're making that, and vice versa. If you are much older and you have a lot more of these cognitive biases because you've been through a lot more, and you're less, you might be using somewhat less intuition because you've seen these things and you're making kind of, not rote decisions, but because, sometimes it's dangerous that you make decisions that are sort of without thought because you've done it so many times. But I think that's okay too, as long as you have somebody that you surround yourself with, some folks that are younger and that think outside the box. And so I think that there's beauty in both of them. I do think as a founder, at least as a startup, there's a lot more advantage to having that first principle thinking and intuition, because you have to, I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but you have to disrupt. You have to find something that's, non-contrarian and right. And you can't really do that if you're just using, historical information.
You have to be a little nuts. You have to be. Otherwise, you're not investable. You're not going to lead. You need to convince people to quit normally fine job to come join you for peanuts. How do you do that if you are not going to break some eggs, right? I think that's what you're referring to, and I think it's very true.
Yeah. What is taking up the most amount of your time right now, or at least for the last month or two?
I'm going to pull up my calendar and I'm going to answer honestly.
Yeah, you can do it. I do the same thing, by the way, but my wife will ask me, what'd you do today? I have to look at my calendar. I'm like, I don't remember.
I have to, listen, you think I'm working during the day, honey? I work at early morning and late at night. Okay. What is taking most of my day? I think it's Q1. So we moved to enterprise early next year, right? And that's blowing up. And so a lot of enterprise deals are, coming to its finish line in terms of like we're so close to signing them. And that requires a lot of travels. So I spend a good chunk of my time traveling to meet these enterprise operators because they're massive and, they want to see you. They want to, build a relationship with you, rightfully so, because they're betting on you so big. And that requires a lot of human touch. So I do a lot of that. I work a lot with our sales and marketing team to continue, and customer team to continue to go ahead and understand what our customers are looking for, what they need. For example, I'm hanging out with my head of customers in my living room right now. He came in early. We're going to go to dinner tonight. We're going to meet some of our customers. So a lot of,
where are you going to dinner?
I'd say like Cote.
Oh, nice. Delicious.
Yeah. And Amy Hom is joining us from former Sweet Green, Bluestone Lane. She's joining us for dinner. She's consulting with us, helping us speak to our customers better. I was a former operator, but even I've forgotten what our customers are looking for, So constantly being in touch and understanding what they're looking for, what they need, and having a pulse on it is, what I'm focused on. So a lot of customer facing, half my job, and half my job is internal facing, working with our ops team, working with our onboarding team, our product and technology team to make things better, faster, take customers live faster, work on features that customers want. We just signed Aramark. And so we're working on a bunch of things for the Nike campus. That's a lot of new things. So yeah, half my job is internal and half is external and on the road.
Yeah. Do you have any tools you use to manage productivity or to manage your time?
Yeah. I have two boards like this. I have two boards.
What is that?
It's a board. And I literally, when I finish my task,
it's a literal board.
It's funny. A literal board. I have two of these. My board that is in my kitchen is my personal board. It has things like finish your AG1, drink your AG1, drink your collagen, nighttime skincare routine, morning time skincare routine, go to the gym, eat 150 grams of protein. So that's my personal one, and this is a work one. I'll read you some of them. Cancel meetings. That's one. Cancel as many meetings as you can. Because, as a founder, some founders, we say yes to a lot of meetings that we shouldn't. Check on leaders. I check on our leaders every day. So that's another thing I check off. Clean up my text is one. Clean up my reminder app is one. So those are 4 of them I'll read out to you, but some of them are more like tactical and like, hit X number in revenue.
Yeah.
So,
where is that board? Where did you find that
it's
board?
For kids. It's for kids. It's for like small kids.
Is that a labeling app thing how did you put those words on there? Is it like
I'm a label maker. I'm a full nerd. I'm a label maker, dude. I'm a label maker, and I'm always organizing stuff and stuff
hilarious.
Like that. So
I wish I was more analog than I am. Part of it is because I have terrible handwriting, but I use this app called Reclaim. It's reclaim.ai, and I've been looking for something like this for so long because I manage my calendar pretty maniacally. My assistant's a big help with it.
Yeah.
But I block off everything. For me, like if it's not on the calendar, I don't do it. Well, I just assume I won't do it, right? So I have time for, personal check-in. I have time for strategy. I have time for exercise. Everything is in there. And then I can measure as well over time, like what did I spend my time on? And I
love that.
Track every day how I'm feeling. And then I can correlate that to how much time I'm spending on X or Y or who I'm meeting with. Anyways, a lot of that was done through things I had to build. And there's this app that I found called Reclaim. It allows you to set priority levels of different types of meetings, and it rearranges your calendar for you, cancels things or moves them back based on priority levels. And,
I love that.
And you can create all these habits. So I have like a habit for, let's pull it up because I don't remember, I have so many of them. Strategic planning. I have one for writing, right? I write every day. One for weekly team care where I just reach out to my team and want to, share thank yous and things. Task work. Personal check-in, meditation, morning email catch-up. And it's all there. And the thing, what I was struggling with for so long was I would block off this time and then nobody could book that. And my assistant would be like, you don't have any time in your schedule. Now, when someone books something, we have these different links they can use. It will rearrange. I'll still get the time in the day for the strategy, but it might bump it by 15 minutes or something. It's I tell everybody about it now because it's filled all the buckets of the things that I needed out of managing time without, being too unintuitive. I
love this. I think it's great.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know why I talk about it so much. I'm not getting paid by them or anything.
You're getting paid for this, man, Josh?
Anyway, so you were talking about customers. I'm always curious about this. And you're right, by the way. In Bear Burger for 10 years, right? Bear Burger. And, I spent 20 plus years in kitchens. But the minute we start building product for restaurants, we're immediately a little bit less connected, right? We're just once removed. So the ability to sort of collect and synthesize feedback is so important. I'm curious, you talk about sort of, first principles, but if you have any frameworks or tactics you use to synthesize all the feedback that you get from customers in order to build the right product or service.
We have a board. If you go to lunchbox.com, can I share my screen?
I think you can. Yeah, I'm going to Lunchbox
anyone ever done
right
this?
Now too. No one has.
Let's try it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So if you go to our website, all right, and you go to the bottom.
I love that you're doing this, by the way. This has never been done before on the podcast.
You can go and you can see hey, can I request features? So we're going to go to the feature request. There's 269 feature requests already. And I can see all the features that are being requested by customers and our team members and potential new customers. And we are all right, what are the top features? Let's build it. In fact, when I talk to customers and they tell me, hey, I really need, loyalty, bank loyalty, I'll go in there myself and I'll put a note in there, right? So some of these are our customers. Some of these are our employees. Stacy works at Team Lunchbox. That's our head of customer. So we're having this conversation together, but we're also having them during drinks. We're having them when we're meeting up for food. And so we're collecting all of that and we're putting it here and we're making it very clear that this is what our customers want, So that's one way we collect data and make that data a little bit more actionable. But more importantly, we're also, using our product. Whenever we launch a restaurant, we're on site, and we're ordering pizza and we're complaining about, hey, this printout came out wrong. So I think that's what we did as operator the most, which is when you open a restaurant, you were there on opening night. You jumped in and you started making stuff. Every operator has done this. You jumped in and you had to clean a table because the line was too long during friends and family night. If we can continue to do that as tech people, we will be better for it. And the way we've been able to achieve that is we hire a lot of former operators. A lot of IT directors work here on our onboarding team, on our configuration team. The IT director of Bear Burger works here. The IT director of Stickies, I believe, works here on our product team. So these are people who have opened restaurants. They're not going to let us forget, what it means to be a restaurant operator. So that's one of the things we have done to reconnect. But I would say 2 years ago, we became very techie and I don't think it was great. We became very techie very quickly. And, it's something we really had to go ahead and, course correct.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just having this conversation, yesterday or 2 days ago, Jordan Bosch on the podcast from Seven Shifts. And we were talking about this and, he had a similar approach, but we have the feature request piece as well. But I think the difficult part I find is synthesizing that information once it comes in, because, we have, most of my team is actually chefs, and restaurant owners, but we have a bias in that we know the product really well. So we know that button we know exactly how to get to each place. And customers often, through no fault of their own, will share the solution that they want and not the problem that they're having, the core problem, right? Like it could mean like, hey, it's too hard to know to find this button. Can you move it closer, or can you make it bigger, or whatever? But the problem might be that it's, people need to order faster, whatever the thing is. And like being able to ascertain that from all of the disparate feedback you get from all these customers. I'm curious if like your product team has anything that they do to sort of synthesize all those feature requests you get into what is the problem that they're trying to solve, and then how you go and build something against it.
I mean, I tell my product team this all the time, which is, because they will always tell people all the time, tell me the problem, not the solution, And I tell them this all the time, which is you have to earn that. Like product teams have to work twice as hard to earn the respect than any other member in the company. And let me tell you why. You're not coding. You don't code, right? You're not an engineer, but you're telling these engineers what to do. The only way that works is you're working twice as hard for them to prepare as much as you can and really go ahead and talk to all the stakeholders. I've talked to these customers. I've talked to the CEO. I've talked to our customer advisory board. I've talked to everybody, so you don't have to. I know you don't want to talk to these people. I've also done I've also designed the storyboard. I've also made sure when it's time to test it, you'll test it really well. I am your buddy. I'm your friend. Can you just make it real now, right? I think that's the kind of product person people want to work with.
Yeah.
I think any other kind of product people you don't want to work with.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, but most product people, I mean, listen, like most humans, 10% are great, 10% are terrible, and 80% are so in the middle, right? So are product people, so are investors, so are CEOs. So, but all of their pitch is the same. Don't tell me the solution, tell me the problem. But I tell them, you got to earn it. You have to earn it.
You're totally right, especially in the restaurant business. I remember one of our product folks that was like late to a call for a customer, and I was like, no, that doesn't happen. As you're saying that, I'm thinking about what is a parallel to a product person in, say, the restaurant industry? Because like, if you think about it, a chef creates a menu, but he's also cooking everything, testing it, coming up with how he's going to sort of present it and what are the like ingredients used and what he's going to cross-utilize. And he might then have the team actually execute that every day, but they're building it. They're actually building it first. And there isn't really someone that's just like comes up with an idea for a menu completely, specs it out, and then has someone else go and execute it. There's no real parallel to that. And it's true. It's a very difficult job to add value,
It's like a founder. Imagine being a founder who never got their hands dirty in the early days. And then, they get to your stage and they're like, you need to do X, Y, and Z, right? When a founder works really hard in the early days, that becomes a legend. Tony Shu delivering food, or, Steve Jobs in the garage making those keyboards one at a time with his girlfriend and Wozniak and others. When founders work their butts off on day one, those are legendary stories where they can now earn it. They have earned the right to now, push their teams hard. Imagine a founder imagine I did not visit any of the restaurants we work with, and I told our customer success team, you should do that. They'd be like, yeah, great. Thanks. Good feedback, Nabeel. How often are you on the road? So it's just leading by example, I guess.
Yeah. And just so that product folks that are going to hear this know, there are some really incredible product managers, product developers.
I have never met one. I'm kidding. They are.
If you haven't, just listen to Lenny Rachitsky's podcast for like 5 minutes and you'll find a couple. But all right, so
By the way, I'll say one thing, and to defend the product people have been bashing, or I've been bashing, I'll say one thing, which is whenever we do something without our product team's permission, we have to redo it. We have to go back and redo it. Whenever we do it with them, that number decreases significantly more. So we absolutely need them. And we just hired our head of product now is from Olo. She spent a decade at Olo, Lisa, and she just joined us and she's just brought in so much. She's been here for 3 weeks. She's already running the place.
Congrats, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been asking this lately because I was on this CEO retreat. I'm a part of this organization called Hampton, and we did this really cool retreat. And the facilitator did this exercise that I really loved. And basically the question is, what makes you angry? Like, what makes your blood boil? So I'll explain why, but what makes you really angry? Like within your company, like what is the thing that makes your blood boil when it happens?
First of all, Hampton, is this the one that's founded by the Million Pod?
Yes.
First Million? Okay, yeah, he's an angel in Lunchbox. I was going to join that, so let me know how that goes offline.
It's great. I've been in it for a couple of years.
Yeah?
I love it. I love it. I've had a really incredible experience. I can't speak for everybody, but I've loved it.
Awesome. So what makes me really angry? Blood boil. What was your answer as I think about it?
So the first thing that came to mind was when someone brings me something and it's not, I can tell that there's a lack of detail and thought put into it. And I had to sort of dig into why, and it's sort of just, this distilled down to, some things that make me really, basically the end result becomes like, what do you value most personally?
Yeah.
But yeah, when someone brings me something and
I have one. I'm ready. Oh, this one bothers me. When people refuse to work outside of 9 to 5.
Why? Why does that make you so angry?
Because restaurant people have no luxury. They have no luxury. They're working the hardest when we are all relaxing on the weekends. Friday nights, weekends. To serve that industry and say, maybe from our, imagine I worked with a tech, imagine you own a restaurant and your POS company is not working. Imagine you call your POS company and it's a support chat that will get back to you on Monday. Like that doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you something.
That doesn't make sense.
It sounds like it's not a work ethic thing. It's actually more of a respect thing. Like
maybe
that there's a lack of respect for the people they serve and for the restaurant industry, as opposed to you just not working hard enough. Unless I'm reading it wrong.
It's less about clock in as many hours as you can, because that's not sustainable. Like I tell our team, like the most important thing you all can do for Lunchbox is take care of your health, take care of your home. I'll get so much more out of you guys if you guys do those two things for me, right? So it's not about clocking in the most hour. It's about being flexible with your hours, just like we should be flexible with a mom who needs to pick up their kids in the middle of the day, or one of our sales leader does soccer coaching every day at between 2 and 3. Okay, but if our customer needs us at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or 10 and they have a restaurant opening, or if it's a Super Bowl, it's all hands on deck, guys. We're all going to be around when it's Super Bowl because we have a bunch of amazing wing concepts that depend on us to get that day right.
Yeah.
So it's respecting the industry we belong to.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the first thing that I thought of when you said it. Maybe just the tone in which you said it is that you value respect highly. So anyways, that exercise, it was a longer drawn out thing because we wrote a bunch of things down, and mine, I'll share mine offline, but it was really helpful to understand, like, personally, what do we value, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily have to be what the company values, but sometimes they are aligned. Anyways, if you had to ask somebody at Lunchbox why they work there, what do you think they would say?
I think they would say, and I've heard this so many times, and I need to hear it, because there's days, I'm sure you don't want to do this, all right? There's days you don't want to do this, or maybe moments you don't want to do this. And when I ask our team, why are you here, or why are you working so hard, what I hear again and again is this company is their best shot at improving the industry for off-premise. And I hear that, and I don't know if I've said it and they believe it, or they say it and now I believe it. I don't care where the origin came from, but this is the symbiotic relationship we have as a team, which is we think we can really improve off-premise.
That's great. That's a great core value for them to have if they're working there. It's funny, it reminds me, in terms of the restaurant world, many years ago, I think this was like 2004, I was working at this restaurant called Boulet, a very famous chef. And it was the day that we actually lost a star. And that team, like many restaurant teams, was filled with musicians and at least in the front
Actors.
of house, front of house, like musicians, actors, dancers, people going to law school and things like that. And I'll never forget it. Boulay, brought us all into the kitchen. He said, look, a lot of you here are not here because you want to be in the restaurant business, or not here because you want to build, a 4-star restaurant. Your dancers, your musicians, your actors, your, whatever you are. But I know this is a really hard restaurant to work at. But if you can give 120% at a job that isn't even the thing that you love the most, just imagine how well you'll be able to do at the thing that you do love the most. And it's stuck with me for, it's been 20 years now.
That's amazing.
Because, you don't always love the job that you're in. And sometimes that's okay if you know why you're doing it. And any job, and by the way, in that same restaurant at the same time, and this was, by the way, at this time, Christina Tosi was working there, and Evan Rich, and Cesar Ramirez, and Dave Santos, and PJ Kalapa. I mean, there's an amazing team of chefs. And, Cesar said something as well, like this was, 4 or 5 months in, and I was like, it was not a great place to work, by the way. It was kind of madhouse. But Cesar said something that also stuck with me that was very similar. He's like, look, any job you have, you're going to find 100 reasons why it sucks. But only you can make it into a good job. No one else,
Mm-hmm.
And if you can take the thing that you're working on right now and figure out how it's going to make you better, that's how you can be, that's how you can be successful. And I think about it a lot especially with restaurants, because it can be a transient career. It can be something where you're doing it because you're getting through college, or you're working on being an actor or a musician. Sometimes you end up going into hospitality, longer term. Sometimes you don't. But in anything that you do, you might be working at Lunchbox, in CS, because eventually you want to go start some other kind of company, and that's fine too. And you might think like, I don't need to know CS so much. I'm just going to do this because I want to experience a startup. But if you can be, the most incredible, customer success rep, that you can, knowing that like actually you want to do something else, you're going to be so much better at the next thing,
Yeah. I love that.
I do too. I'm pretty sure you're an avid learner. Like, you read a lot. Are there things are you measures you take like throughout your day, week, month to try to incorporate learning into what you do?
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Let's do it. I love this new thing. I'm going to ask people to do this.
Talk is easy. Share your screen, be about it, right? Okay. So this is my Notion board. Okay. I have everything here. All my hobbies, all the books I read, everything I do for wellness, all my friends, all my frameworks, all my core values, all my journals, my writings, my therapy notes, all my haters, how I modulate emotions.
I want to see that one.
Yeah, I know you do.
That's funny.
But like each page is this detail, like, this is the biographies of the people I read, and there's a lot of them, and like, I will read about, Medici, and I'll take notes there. I'll read about Carnegie. I'll read about Bezos. So I'm constantly learning about and reading about folks, because history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And founders, we all come in 4 or 5 different formats again and again. We just keep on showing up, like you read about all of them and you're like, oh, Bezos and Walton are the same guy, reincarnations. Elon is very similar to Benjamin Franklin, how they both had the biggest press at their time. They both, wanted to go ahead and have publication, wanted to be in government, wanted to invent. You see them reading about each other. Bezos used to read about Walton, Elon used to read about Benjamin Franklin, and you just see us emulating from our heroes, and then also bringing ourselves to the picture. So I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly learning about frameworks and systems, and I'm also constantly failing at applying half of them or more than half of them. So yeah.
I love that. I struggle a bit because I read a lot, but like I'm a big believer, not just because I believe it's more helpful, but also just because the way that I operate, it's better for me. I'm a big believer in just in time versus just in case information. So meaning like I read something and then I want to, take action on that, operationalize it into my like world somehow. Otherwise I'll forget it,
Yeah.
So I take notes and things like that, but it's so hard to remember all these things if you don't actually start to use them right away. It's funny. I was reading Genghis Khan, the last book I was on right now. He had this premise of, well, the number 10 sticks out a lot because he would build armies, and basically it's such a beautiful lesson in scale. is that everything was sort of this denomination of 10, and there were names for each denomination. So like, one person would oversee a group of 10, and then there'd be 10 groups of 10, and one group would oversee all 10 of the groups, and one person from that. And then of those 10, 100 and 1,000 and 10,000. And so you had these sort of blocks of like each time, there's this, scale of 10 to 10 times 10 times 10. And, basically life was at stake. So you were responsible for the 10, groups that you had, or the 100 groups, or the 1,000 groups, and sometimes by death, right? So and of course, we don't want to kill people, but the notion of using these denominations to think about how to scale a team, a process, was like fascinating to me. And that's what I love so much about, like, we just think like business books, are the ones that are going to teach us these lessons. But you're so right. I totally agree. Like, there's so much about what people do that you can apply to so many things, from cooking to entrepreneurship to having a podcast.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, we talked a lot about you and Lunchbox today. Was there other things that you think I didn't ask you that you want to share or talk about?
I think as founders, we don't talk about it enough. I think we're starting to. I hope we are. But you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help the people next to you. I think boardrooms, investors, and everyone should invest in their founders in taking care of their mental and physical health. And founders need to lean in as well. Like, you got to take care of your health. I did it all of 2023, like my mental health, going to therapy, building my community of friends. One of the most important things, one of the first things you throw out the window when you are building a company, And I think if you need to just do those three things, it's so profitable. I don't know how else to say it. It's so profitable. What are we trying to do? We're trying to build a great company that can have a massive impact. The best way to do that is take care of yourself. And I think we need to talk about that more as founders. You got to take care of yourself. The easiest thing to neglect, but it's literally the first thing you need to do. The phrase goes, the person who cannot do 5 minutes of meditation needs 50 minutes of it. That's the best way to, I can summarize this.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. It's the funny thing is you need all three for any of them to be optimized, to be the best, right? So if I look at, health, friends and family, and career, right? Those three things, those are like the three parts of any of our worlds, right? And if any one of them isn't being taken care of, the other two are going to suffer. If you work on, if you work really hard, then you're not going to have a personal life. And if you have a personal life, you're not going to be able to work as hard. And it's not true. Like, you have to have all three.
Yeah, I think you can modulate. You can like say, hey, I'm going to do 20% health this year, and I'm going to focus mostly on career, because career, like, it's the first year of the startup or the second year or a pivotal year. I think you can modulate. I think you're allowed to modulate, right? But I think what you're not allowed to do is just completely say, oh yeah, I'll pick that up next year. Oh yeah, mental health, I'll take care of that in 7 months from now. I think modulation is welcomed, but more than anything else, if founders understood investing in themselves is the best investment they can make in their employees, their team members, their companies, if investors also understood that, I think every boardroom would be talking about this, and every boardroom should talk about this.
Yeah, I think that's right, man. We have a board meeting next week. I'll talk about it then.
You got to bring someone else in. You can't talk about your own mental health. You got to bring someone else to pitch it,
Yeah, that's probably true. This was awesome. I'm really grateful for the time, and grateful to, to have you sharing some more of your, your background and on Lunchbox. And I'm also just like, so it's silly to say because I'm not anything other than we slightly know each other. I'm just so proud of what you've built, because I saw it from when it was just an idea and you were hustling to get people to, to say yes to what it is today. So thanks and congrats.
Thank you.
And
thank you. And more than anything else, thank you for, I never do anything this long, so I really got comfortable and was able to talk. And I really forgot we were recording for a little bit. My point is, thank you for creating the space. And we don't hang out enough, but I feel like we've been checking in on each other religiously. And I feel like there's some camaraderie there. And the love is real. And I'm excited for everything you guys are doing as well.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. And we will see each other in real life soon.
Let's do it.
So,
Let's do it.
Thanks for tuning into the Mies podcast. The music from the show is a remix of the song Art Mirror by an old friend, hip-hop artist, Fresh Daily. For show notes and more, visit getmees.com/podcast. That's GETMEEZ.com/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you can share it with fellow entrepreneurs and culinary pros, and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Keep innovating, don't settle, make today a little bit better than yesterday, and remember, it's impossible for us to learn what we think we already know. See you next time.